like the responsible choice. Exploration with the city results in something that there's a beautiful asset there in Falcon Park that currently gets utilized between Memorial Day, if you will, and Labor Day. NJCAA athletics, the college, our competitions go from Labor Day to Memorial. No better way to be able to work together than with two entities that are important to this community that don't overlap to be able to coexist and maximize the utilization of a facility at less than $3 million compared to 15. When we're looking at the opportunity for turf, think about a day like today. Rain all day. Not atypical for a certain fall day or a certain spring day in late March, middle of March when college athletics are going. Our lacrosse teams would have played their games today. This past spring, when we went from winter essentially to summer, my understanding is Falcon Park had a number of contests scheduled for Auburn and Large City School District to play baseball games there and had to cancel a number of them, not just on the day there was a weather event, but for days subsequent to that otherwise wouldn't be ready because it tear up the field. In this case, we would be able to maximize that. And so from the institution's perspective, this exploration goes beyond just having something that we don't have. We're going to be able to increase our athletic offerings. We're going to add men's lacrosse back. We're going to add women's lacrosse back. And our new baseball program that we're going to be rolling out next spring will be able to ensure that they'd be able to play on that field. We have an agreement with Falcon Park for baseball now. This past spring, by the time the field would have been ready, the college season would have essentially been over and not been able to utilize that field. That's a problem that deserves a solution. This is one of those potential solutions. The other thing that sometimes gets lost when we're talking about athletic fields, and I'm not just talking about intercollegiate athletics, the vision also goes beyond that. Think about what the institution's known for. The institution's known for programs in media arts, telecommunications, broadcasting, sports management, business. We have mandatory requirements in our degrees for applied learning opportunities and internships. We already have a history of having a number of interns participate and work with Falcon Park. This is going to give students an experience beyond what they already are able to do in a different way. Adding the additional sports creates more volume of opportunity for students to be able to engage and support in a way that otherwise is being considered. So we're looking at this as not just athletics. We're looking at this as an extension of our academic program to be able to support our students and to be able to enhance their experience. And when you look at it all together, with a potential opportunity for reimbursement from SUNY, and a potential opportunity to be able to spread out a debt service and a commitment over a number of years, and a potential opportunity to participate in shared services, in addition to that, this is something that the college could potentially, if we're able to successfully reach agreement with the city, and if their elected body supports it, this is something that can go from what's been a 30-year conversation to potentially breaking ground as early as the fall and being up and ready to go next spring. It's ambitious. It may seem fast for some, but I can tell you this, we've spent countless hours on this exploration and analysis for the last 2 years. And it comes to a point now where it's just an opportunity that needs to be explored, needs to be public. I appreciate the different pieces of opinion and feedback on it. But think about what you challenge us to do as leadership at the college. And I think it checks a number of those boxes. So I just appreciate your openness to the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Dennison.
You talk about bringing back men's and women's lacrosse
Yep.
and stuff like that. I guess my question is, you also at one time had football.
Right.
Why did these sports disappear in the first place?
We didn't have athletic fields. You can't compete in a marketplace if you don't have the facilities. My understanding is when the school had lacrosse a number of years ago, they played their home games at a high school in Syracuse.
Well, I guess the second part of that question is, you got Holland Field. I mean, I don't know. I can't see tearing apart the most beautiful grass baseball field and all of that league when you've got $10 million or whatever it costs, the Auburn taxpayers, to build a facility that's like opening your back door. I mean, why
Absolutely.
can't that be? And this whole stuff about the rain and all this, I don't disagree to you to a certain extent, but turf fields can only take so much rain. And they also only have about a 10-year lifespan. And a lot of your professional and college, major college teams are going away from turf fields because of the injuries that it's causing. They're going back to natural grass. So, I mean, it's a, you know, we can have this argument for hours each way. But I just look at Highland Field and I'm going, makes no sense to me. I mean, there's got to be some sort of agreement that could be reached there to do all this, in my opinion.
I won't speak for the school district, but it's a great question. I think a point that should be highlighted. I was at city council last week, and Councilor Carvajal made the reference, because I believe at that point she was on the school board. And she mentioned that prior to turf, the utilization, the number of events at Holland Stadium was something in the 20 a year range. Since Holland Stadium has opened, we have been working with them to try to get time. We have been able to find some time on Sunday afternoons. We've been able to find 45 minutes in the middle of the day, because the gym class utilization, you're talking about modified through varsity, you're talking about men's and women's sports, you're talking about multiple sports, and you're talking about students, whether it be high school or college, that need to go to class between the morning and early afternoon, because when you're looking at competition, even at the college level, travel time would be noon or after to be able to play evening contests, whether it be 40 minutes away or whether it be 2 hours away on a weeknight. So our student athletes have to compress their academics. They must be full-time. We encourage them to spread it out and be able to take it out through most mornings if they can. So you're looking at a number of entities that all need the facility between 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock, not to mention the other community groups, marching band, this, that, and the other that utilize it. So I understand the sentiment goes to, we already have one. But there's realistic, legitimate issues with being able to coexist and utilize it. So I would flip it back and say, what could the community do, the city do, if it had 2 facilities? What could it do to attract people in the summer for potential tournaments? What could it do to be able to bring people in a different way that may not be able to be accomplished today? Lots of assets in the community that are utilized very well. The goal here from the college ultimately is to be able to leverage one. We don't need to do these things alone. We view it as the responsible choice to be able to maximize what's already there and to be able to show how city government, county government, and an institution can work together.
Mr. Lattimore.
Mr. Durant, you know I've been a supporter of the college, and you know we have a committee system up here, and normally it goes through government ops. I know that you've been excused from going through those steps. You know, I would have liked to have seen us utilize the former government that we have instead of just getting together. But anyways, you know my passion is the IAGT,
Right.
and I know that Jefferson County just got a $2 million grant up there for technology. I know I stood with Schumer with grants at OCC in front of Burn Dairy in Syracuse for updating the tech, and I just heard the president speak about NASA and how much money they got. I'd like to see the cooperation between our federal, state, and local governments to bring that technology back to life, which would fill the seats at the community college. We're the only ones that have it. I don't know why we're not breathing life into it.
I hear you.
Mr. Didio.
Brought up a point a couple of times in the past about student housing. And where are we at with that? I think we're missing the boat on not having some type of student housing. I talked to the basketball people. I've talked to several coaches that used to be there. And I talked to different people As far as the other community colleges, maybe three, that student housing is at the top of the list. Where's ours?
Well, you know, we have talked about this. We talked about this actually when basketball came up, when you had your meeting at the college. I think it was back in October, and a number of other times. So, you know, student housing was an institutional priority going back a long period of time. And, you know, one of the accomplishments I'm most proud of in my professional career prior to arriving here at Cayuga was being in a position to lead the development of student housing from not having a residential campus to 408 beds with the leadership of that college. And when I came here, I evaluated the studies that had been done previously. And the studies and the needs capacity themselves that are coming back from the research that had been done does not support and did not support at the time a viable student housing option for Cayuga Community College. We currently have, you know, the opportunity for nearly 100 students in Latimer Hall. I'm not comparing an off-campus environment to what an on-campus environment would be. But when they did a needs analysis, when it came to the Auburn campus, the need capacity looked somewhere between 90 and 170 students. If you already have 100 students, and you're not able to glean that there's necessarily more at that time, it may not be the right moment in time for it. I can tell you this, as the new president that came in here 3 years ago with trustees that have explored housing a number of times, with community members that have talked about housing a number of times, it took a little bit more resolve to tell you we're not ready and it's not the right time than it would have been able to say, let's go do it. In addition to that, we can talk about the landscape of higher education across the state. When housing was being explored at the original time in the late 90s, I believe, you know, there might have been only 10 or so New York State community colleges who had housing at the time. Today, I believe it's over 20. And in recent years, there have been institutions, unfortunately, who have built housing to a capacity that was at a different time that they thought they had, that is now not full. There was a story nationally just a week ago that came out that another community college in New York State actually was selling their student housing for other purposes. So I caution people when it comes to, yes, it might have felt, heard, sounded like, and may have been the right choice at a particular time as an investment or risk and an opportunity. I can tell you, it hasn't been since I've been here. I also can tell you, because I've said this to our trustees, I've said this to anyone, you want to increase your likelihood for successful student housing? You need to increase your athletics, you need to have extracurricular offerings, you have to have the FTE in place to be able to support a 24/7 community. Much different college, many more resources to make sure it's successful. Because the only way I'll ever advocate in front of you or anyone else that student housing makes sense is if I have the confidence that we have the infrastructure in place that when that parent, that supporter, that student chooses to enroll with us, that we're going to be in the best position to make them be successful. Absent of that, you will never hear me talk about adding student housing. I've seen it done. I've seen it be successful. It's not the right time for Cayuga.
Mr. Whitman.
I'm going to be in the minority here on a few things, not unusual. I'm not college educated. Maybe I don't get it. What is a community college?
What is a community college?
What is it there
How much
for?
time do we have? So, the community college itself is an institution that sets itself up in a comprehensive way to be able to provide access to higher education that's affordable. I'll be brief. I can go on forever. And that ultimately mirrors opportunities for the community in both the areas of workforce development and training, and provide pathway for transfer to baccalaureate options, which we do. 60% of our graduates are intended to transfer to four-year institutions. You look as a mission to support your local community. At the same time, you try to create yourself in a way that takes open access institution of students, support them so that student can reach his or her goal. And ultimately, we work together, and we're in a more vibrant way. I always talk about a community college in a simple way. We should be the educational, social, and cultural hub of this community. That's how we should be seen, and that's what we should be striving towards.
And I agree. I feel that the community college is here to help the community. It's aiding your own community to help itself. Get higher education, help the workforce, help struggling families get their higher education, get on their feet with help from the community, with help from the taxpayers. I start to get a little antsy when we're talking about student housing. Now we're not talking about local. We're bringing people in. I am not a sports person, so I understand where the sports fit in. However, at what expense and at what cost? And in my mind, that's not what the college is there for. I understand the draw, but it makes me wonder at what point is the college outgrowing itself? We're getting too big to support the size we are, so we want to get bigger to bring in more, when maybe we should just stay smaller and focus on what the intention was in the first place. And that's just my 2 cents. Thought I'd throw it out there. I have before, but it's been a while.
Well, we could talk about being too big, but the institution 10 years ago was about 500 FTE larger than what it is today.
Yeah,
When I talk about growth, I'm talking about from last year to this year.
I think that's a good sign. The
Well,
community
it
can either
is, but
afford to go somewhere else or is doing well.
You know, one of the things that I think we need to be mindful of, and I'm just going to be completely candid. The institution of the last 7, 8 years went through a lot. And over the last 3 years, starting my 4th year, and I'm working with the trustees, working with others, we've been trying to do what I thought is asked of us, is to position us in a place that no longer can look backwards, but can look ahead. And, you know, yes, we have tripled our fund balance. Yes, we have met our enrollment metrics the last couple of years and on pace to do it next year. But 3 months ago, even with all that looking ahead, all that decision-making, all that, 3 months ago, in about a week and a half period of time when we did not know what the state of New York was going to do with the chargeback methodology, the end result decision in the executive budget was the difference of nearly $1 million swing of losing money compared to where our budget was this year. So all the due diligence we put into, all the scrutiny, all the managing as tightly as we can't control every variable. We try to, but it was a much different conversation with you, it was a much different conversation with the trustees, and a much different conversation inside the walls of the institution based on what ended up happening with that chargeback methodology that I've talked about before. It would have been a different time. Now, our job is to ultimately be cautious and conservative, but be also trying to position us in a place that continues to be a place where people want to go, meets their expectations, and ultimately can thrive. You know, we've done the analysis on what it can be to add 3 sports teams, being conservative in the number of new students that would go, and all the assumptions that we made. And I can assure you, the cost between tuition, the cost with percentage of those students coming from out of county, and the cost of state aid will outweigh any of the costs associated with whatever the agreement is for Falcon Park.
Mr. Pinkney.
So I may agree with you on your comments on the housing situation at this time, but in hindsight, I know you just said something about not looking back, but do you feel that Lattimore Hall was the proper situation for the community college to have housing? And if you go ahead with the Falcon Park expansion and you get more student athletes here,
Right.
what are your plans for housing for them? Are we just going to have them housed throughout the city, or is the college going to have a little bit of a committed area for housing up there? And I don't mean 4 towers
Right.
and overbuilding, but
Right.
tell me your thoughts on that, please.
So my thoughts are that, you know, if we're successful in adding the athletic programs, and if we're successful with a couple of the other initiatives that we have, with housing, circumstances can change and the need can improve. I know it was very definitive a few minutes ago on where we are today and where we've been with housing. I also know that if 180 beds is a feasible number, and when we anticipate that with the 100 we already have and some more student athletes, it would be more than realistic for us to have a waiting list, there might be the right opportunity to be able to do that. in a couple years down the road. Circumstances change if you have more to offer and more people are utilizing. But we need to experience the pressure of supporting students that are looking for residence. We need to experience, I think, a greater need. And if we have that, then the conversation can change as soon as a couple of years from now. But I'm just letting you know, from what exists and what has existed, it wasn't the time.
Okay, so back to Lattimore Hall.
Lattimore Hall, I think listen, we have 100 students a year that are utilizing Lattimore Hall. It's providing them probably the chance to be coming here or not. And so for the purpose of having it, over the last couple of years, we've done a number of things internally to help better support the students, to be able to focus on retaining the students and supporting their transition. We're actually going to be adding a couple more initiatives this year to make sure that they feel the support and connectivity to the college, even though it's off campus. And that's our responsibility, just like I would say if it's on campus. You know, we have an agreement. It certainly is a private entity, but there are students, and ultimately we have a responsibility to make sure that they feel connected to what's going on the campus. And you know, I think it's working as best it can.
Mr. Lattimore.
Doctor, I know we've had some issues with the foundation, and I'd like to be able to say we've resolved those issues. I guess it's still under some scrutiny. But I would like to see, I know there's been a couple presentations for stranded assets that are up there in Fulton to have some kind of workout to reduce the liabilities that the foundation has. Now, I know that when I ask you these questions, well, it's not me, it's not the college, it's the foundation, or it's IAGT. Well, I think that, you know, we on this board would like to see all those things working to their best. So I would like to see you push forward some of those stranded assets that are in the North Country.
You know, I hear what you're saying, and I just think that you need to hopefully appreciate and understand that there's ongoing litigation that sometimes prohibits us from being able to you know, fully talk about what's available to us or not. So I think, you know, I just ask for patience and understand that we're fully on top of it, and we're trying to manage it as best we can.
Mr. DeForest.
What I would appreciate, and not tonight, but I think it would be a great thing if everybody in this body got to hear a brief overview of the amount of staff that is required to support a 180-bed dormitory.
Yeah.
What's involved with student services and student activities and so on and so forth. Because I don't think that there's a good understanding
Yeah.
of what's required to make all that work. I mean, it's more than just creating 180 beds.
Right, yeah, you need 24/7 public safety. So my first year here, that's the exact question I posed the institution. I created a task force that said, you can talk about the need all you want. The question you need to answer is, what would the impact be to the campus, and are you ready? I convened a task force. They went and visited a number of campuses and came back and said, these are the things that would have to be considered if we were able to do it. And if you quantify that and you say, well, if we're only going to build housing for 30 FTE, given the cost associated with that, it's going to be problematic. I have some information I'd be happy to share and pass along that's only 2 years old. Speaks to that exactly.
Mr. Dennison.
And on that same note as Joe's, it's no different with the athletics too. It'd be nice to know, you know, maintenance costs, insurances. I mean, you're gonna have to have athletic trainers, all sorts of those things. But on the chargeback thing, and I know I've mentioned this to Fred before, and I don't know if we've ever got anywhere. If we bring in student athletes from, let's say, Oswego County,
Right.
that's not really helping us that much with the bargain deal that Oswego County gets for the whole I mean, what was it, 1970, whatever, that this?
No, it is helping
Contract.
us. So in the event we bring in a student from Oswego County, and there, let's just for education purposes, let's just say it's an FTE. We don't need to get into the metrics of it. That student's paying full tuition, just like they are here, right? Just like they would be from Cayuga County. We're also then billing that county the chargeback, and that chargeback is $3,700 per FTE. The piece that we don't get is the $300 capital piece. So from an operating perspective,
That was part of that contract from
yes,
1970.
from an
or
operating
whatever.
perspective, we are made whole every time a student comes from out of county residence. And nearly 60% of our student body comes from out of county. And as you saw on the sheet when we did the budget, $3 million allocation for Cayuga County, and the out-of-county chargeback, I think allocation was somewhere at about $5.5 or $5.6 million worth of revenue coming to the college in the budget.
I still think we should look into a contract that was in from 1970. There's got to be a way that
Any other questions for Dr. Durant?
changed.
I'll be here all night.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, committee reports, individual legislator reports. Mr. Dennison.
I just want to remind everybody the Big Six is this week. So show up.
Thank you. Mr. Lattimore.
So I'm not the
Mr.
only
Chairman,
legislator there.
it was nice to have our 50th reunion. The city of Auburn, I think, was healthier when we had west, east, and central. So whenever the educational people make a decision to move the high school out of town, or the college wants to do something different, it does make a big impact to our overall city. So I just wanted, the decisions that we make do make a difference in the heartbeat of the city and the county.
Thank you. Any other reports? Ms. McNabb-Coleman.
I just wanted to make a comment. I had a call from a constituent today who visited and utilized the Veterans Affairs Office. He said it was the best treatment imaginable, and he said that he sent hats off to the legislature, to the Veterans Affairs Office, that it was incredible. He couldn't say enough positive things, and he just wanted to share that. So I wanted to share that all with you today.
Thank you for sharing. That's great to hear.
Sure.
Mr. Foley.
Mr. Chairman, I do have two announcements, well, the first one is today I went to a meeting with the city of Auburn for the replacement bridge on State Street. That's the one right next to Curly's, and that's going to be done in 2019. They're fleshing it out now. They presented their plan and are going to move forward. I think that's going to be a major project for the city of Auburn, and it is intertwined with the Greenway Trail that they're doing throughout the city for a walking path. There will be some labor pains with that, of course, but the initial designs look beautiful. So I did want to mention that in case there's other legislators that are from the city that care about that. It's directly in my district, that's why I attended. And secondly, I don't know if this is a good time or not to pull it up, but we can flesh this out too. I think all of us received the invitation from the White House to go there. If not, I think everyone received that in terms of, it was an invitation to go to a county leader summit, which included leaders, executives from New York that are at the county level, so that include county legislators. It was, NISAC confirmed that it was a real invitation, that was for a workshop, summit, and a White House tour at the White House in DC. And my initial response was, I think this is pretty cool, regardless of what you might think of the administration or otherwise. With that said, for this body, there might be people that want to go to that. And I initially asked Sheila, what were our numbers looking at for lodging or mileage. She said that there was a decent chunk left. We really haven't traveled much as a body this year. We still do have NISAC coming up, but if we go what we have in past years, it really shouldn't be a problem. With that said, I just want to make sure as a body that nobody has a big issue with any legislator attending that conference, which is, I believe, a really great opportunity for anyone to go if they wanted to. And so I wanted to kind of bring that to our attention and see how it goes.
Thank you. I would suggest if you are interested, let the county administrator know so we can get some numbers together, and Sheila, so that we can get numbers together to see what's manageable in the 18 budget.
Okay.
Mr. Lattimore?
I've visited some of our elected officials when I was down there in my other capacity, and always brought back grants or money, so it's well worth it to make a presentation or to make sure that we're visible down there.
Thank you. Any other individual reports? Mr. Batman?
I just wanted to mention that it came up in the shared services plan, and I know the administrators mentioned before, the focus and the need to finally, hopefully, begin to look at our building needs. I know it's being worked on. I just want to say two things. Great, good, we need to move forward with it, and that it's important that we keep our focus on it. We have not been successful in moving that forward in the past, but we're making at least a little progress now, which is good to see. And I think meeting or two ago, Mr. Lattimore asked what's going to be our next focus, our next priority, and I would suggest that that's probably a really good one to move that forward if we can. So thank you for getting on that, and I look forward to maybe, if not resolve, at least progress.
Thank you. Other comments, Mr. Lattimore?
Well,
You're
in
hitting,
our,
you're near your limit, just so you know.
I know, it's rough. I get paid big money up here, though, and I gotta keep going. It said no proclamations, but I would like to have our 50th introduced to, on our website. Are we doing a website, or where are we?
We'll find out in a few minutes.
All right, county administrators report.
I'll keep it short tonight, Mr. Administrator, because much of what we've been working on for last month has been related to flushing out these shared services projects. As I alluded to when we were looking at facilities, we're also in an exploratory phase of looking at the feasibility of consolidating the Office of Aging in the Boyle Center. We've been working closely with the county attorney and outside counsel on a number of fronts related to the Cayuga Indian Nation developments. We've been working with the real property and the treasurer's office and the county attorney, planning to work on some proposed updates to the PACE legislation that you passed, PACE law you passed previously. The Environmental Investment Corporation that provides the financing for those projects has proposed some updates based on updates to the state legislation. So we'll be preparing a package for you in the next couple of months to bring forward that brings us back in compliance with the law. So when you passed the law, you were in compliance, then they updated the statute, and there's some housekeeping items, and we had some questions that we were flushing out before we brought it forward. We're moving forward with we've signed the shared service agreement, or the intermunicipal agreement with the city, to move forward on the drainage project that you've approved. The construction timeline of that is a little behind schedule due to the busy construction season, but we expect contractors to be out here in about three weeks. They're hoping to start on Court Street before school starts, but if they don't, then they're going to wait until after the first day of school to start. But that will be moving forward and completed this year. We'll send out notices to all the employees. We've got a plan for handicap parking, and the city's agreed to allow county employees to park for free in the garage during the couple weeks that portions of our lot aren't available. Steve and I and outside counsel have been working to with the Cayuga County Development Corporation to finalize the loan documents to Wells College for bridge financing for the water treatment system upgrades, for the carbon activation system that will be in place to prevent harmful algal blooms from getting into the water system in the village of Aurora. We have finalized the permit conditions for the broadband permit and transmitted those to New Visions. We've also developed new maps based on the phasing information that was provided to us. We're just waiting from New Visions to confirm that the phasing maps are correct. but I believe that that's all been transmitted to him, and we look forward to wrapping that up. We also spent a significant amount of time with Human Resources and Labor Council this month responding to the Supreme Court's decision in Janus v. ASME, which ruled, affected how we collect union dues. Previous state law was that whether somebody chose to join a union or not, we collected either union dues or an agency fee from them. The Supreme Court subsequently ruled earlier this month that the collection of agency fees could not be conducted without affirmative written consent. So within the first pay period following the Supreme Court decision, we communicated with each of the unions to assess which of those people in their lists in our employees that were covered by the collective bargaining units were members and which were not voluntary members. And for those that we knew were not voluntary members, we ceased those deductions, and unless they're subsequently provide written consent, then they're no longer collecting those dues from people. That's a very controversial subject and one that we wanted to deal with very impartially, without taking a political position, but just complying with the Supreme Court's decision and respecting employees' choices as the Supreme Court outlined them. So that was there was a lot of work related to that. We had communicating with all the unions on that, and we've wrapped that up this month as well. We've finalized the update to our recommended updates to the travel policy, which we will be bringing forward next month to the Government Operations Committee, and we're just preparing to send out a budget memo and start preparing the 2019 budget requests.
Mr. Lattimore.
I know I'm over my limit, Mr. Chair, but as vice chairman, I just like,
You get an extra one.
You get some bonus.
I get a bonus.
This is it, though.
Well, in your absence, and I hope you had a great time with your darling wife when you were on vacation, there was a signed agreement with the city. Now, the participation, that project happens to be in my district. I had to sign in your absence, but whenever there's a project or something that affects a legislator, they should be in the room from start to finish on these projects. And I mentioned something with Justin at City Hall in regards to, having that done in the future. So whether or not it's Indian Affairs or whether it's an extension of a parking lot, if it affects a legislator, and we've always had the courtesy of having the legislator in the room from start to finish so that they can inform us as legislators as exactly what they feel, other than the administrators. So in the future, if we're going to continue with this committee situation, hopefully it'll change. I don't like it the way it works now. But if something affects our district, we want to be there from start to finish, whether the personalities in the room agree or disagree.
Thank you, Mr. Lattimore. Any other questions for the administrator? All right, I just have a couple things for you. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Steve, Justin, Lynn, Monica, Bill, and Lori for all the work they put in on the shared services plan. I can tell you the first Friday meeting at 3 o'clock, not everybody was thrilled to be in that room, but they created worthwhile discussion, and people walked away taking something away from each of those meetings. So thank you very much for all your hard work on that. I also want to thank all those elected officials for their work and being open-minded and having frank discussions and saying, this is where I see an opportunity and this is where we're going down the wrong road. I missed Health and Human Services because I attended City Council meeting to support the possibility of the turf at Falcon Park. I did meet with a couple counselors after that, and they were very positive on the project, which is a good note. And then finally, tomorrow morning, I am going to Rochester to meet with Tish James, who is a candidate for the Attorney General position. It's going to be hosted by Harris Beach, so land in the trust will definitely be one of the topics discussed. If you have anything that you want me to share or any information you would like me to bring back, please just send an email, and I will definitely take care of that. So, that's all I have, unless you have questions for me.
How was your trip?
Fantastic.
Great.
All right, we have no appointments and no communications or announcements, so we can get right into resolutions, Ways and Means.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Regular monthly resolutions 1A, 1B, have been through in committee and passed. I'd like to bring them up as a bundle.
Okay.
Second.
Can I have number 2 excluded?
You want to separate 1B?
Yeah.
Okay. So 1A, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. 1B,
Yeah. I thought Joe did
He's in the wrong place. Move it.
Second.
Yeah.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Mr. Bennett.
Does he know?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ways and Means has 4 resolutions. I'd like to bundle Ways and Means 1 and 2, unless anybody would like them separated.
I'd like to have number 2 separated. I'm sorry, Chairman.
All right, so we'll do WM1. Any discussion?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. WM2, and Mr. Lattimore, you have reached your limit.
Move it.
And we have a second for WM2.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a concern about starting pay for people. I mean, people who have been here for a number of years. I want to make sure that the compensation is correct. I know that all this stuff is public information. Anybody citizen can foil anything at any time, whether it's in Justin's office or my email or anybody else's. I don't know. I just want to make sure that we're fair and equal with all of our employees with the number of years they serve, and the steps have been put in place in civil service to compensate for that. So I want to make sure that nobody who comes in is compensated more than people who have been here for a number of years.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I'm still having a problem with the executive assistant terminology. I still am tied up with the CGR report, hasn't been approved by the legislature. The county's getting smaller, and yet we keep adding these new positions, and it's going the wrong way. I'm just having a problem with that terminology. Which is wrong? What's the problem with what we have now?
You want to address that one?
Sure. Well, the two parts to that question, Mr. Ripley. The first, related to the CGR, is the CGR report, I don't think, was ever meant to be adopted as a unified report. It was because it was a series of separate recommendations. It was really, it was one consultant's observations of the things that they thought, and it presented a menu of options for you to consider, some of which I've recommended and focused on. Now, as it relates to this resolution, my office has an administrative assistant position that's vacant. I've proposed modifying that into an executive assistant position. That's the gist of this proposal. The duties and the qualifications were tweaked from the administrative position, but it's a create and fill and abolish.